Good morning, respected panel. Today, Vedant Polymerace will provide our solutions on how to make Cybertron a giant in the East Asia pharmaceutical market. The countries we focus on today primarily is India. India, according to the Asia Pacific Innovative Pharmaceuticals Risk Reward Index, is on the bottom right quadrant, putting it a high reward, high risk country. We think India has high rewards due to its growing GDP and large population size, but it also has high risk due to its poor infrastructure and availability of counterfeit drugs. In our research, we'll be talking about how we counteract these high risk elements of poor infrastructure and counterfeit drugs, and how we properly harness the growing GDP and large population in order to achieve our goal of growth. Furthermore, India as an emerging market also gives us the capability of establishing a long-term pharmaceutical relationship that puts us in a very good position for the future. The main market we'll be focusing on in India is the rural markets. According to the PwC estimate, the India pharmaceutical industry would be $30 billion by 2020, and the rural sector would be the fastest growing sector of the pharmaceutical industry, thus making it our main focal point. Furthermore, PMI forecast shows there's a great potential in over-the-counter drug sales, which will be further elaborated in the next slides. The reasons why we're choosing the Indian market, specifically the generic and OTC drug market in rural areas, is as follows. Firstly, there is a high inability of a significant proportion of people to afford prescription medicine in rural areas due to avid poverty and inaccessibility to doctors. Secondly, this leads to a high rate of self-medication, which creates a demand for OTC drugs, as seen by the Indian government in various reports. Thus, this provides us with an avenue to partner with the Indian government to provide low-cost OTC drugs through government pharmacies. This has been seen as a growing trend in India through recent papers by the Indian Pharmaceutical Society, as well as the India's Free Medicine for All campaign in 2012. We tell you that the partnership with the Indian government would be fruitful on multiple levels. Firstly, the Indian policy of the provision of free medicine in rural India is 5.4 billion as of 2012. This allows us to partner with the Indian government for the provision of drugs in this market. Secondly, the launch of the Ayushman Bharat scheme, which is the biggest health insurance plan in the world, would be taking place on the 25th of September, giving us another reason on why we should capitalize on this market as such. Thus, the government, seeing that OTC drugs are important in rural areas, would be able to provide us subsidies to lower the cost of production in order to meet their own goals, and could align with our goals too, of that is to expand in the rural market of India. The reason why we're using the rural market would be established now. Firstly, we understand that there are certain practical concerns of going to the rural market. Firstly, there's a lack of infrastructure. Secondly, there is rampant counterfeiting. And thirdly, there's also high competition. We'll tell you how we tackle all of these problems and establish ourselves in the rural market in India. Firstly, on the idea of a lack of complete infrastructure, we understand that 67% of the villages in India still lack proper built roads. That means proper accessibility to these villages through vehicles is limited. So this provides us with an avenue to provide drugs through alternative mechanisms such as drones. The usage of drones have been amazingly successful in countries like Africa, where companies have partnered with Matternet to provide drugs to remote hospitals in Africa. So partnering with Matternet allows us to expand our growth into these areas which can't be accessed by roads, thus allowing us an avenue to access the rural market population in India. Secondly, how we tackle counterfeiting in this economy is through using RFID, that is radio frequency infrared devices. So each of our packages packaged in drones will have a unique RFID chip in them that can be used to verify the creation of the drug from the original manufacturer, and not from a counterfeit company present in India. This tackles the problem of counterfeiting. Finally, the competition that we face in the rural market is not really established. Why? Because Novartis India, although focused on rural competition, is only present in areas that are accessible by roads. Thus, by targeting rural areas, that is the majority of areas that are inaccessible by roads, we allow ourselves to separate ourselves from the competition and establish ourselves as a strong player in provision of drugs in rural areas.
The first country we have decided to prioritize is Australia. This is because we already have a strong presence in Australia, with 50% of our revenue in 2018 being made of sales in Australia alone. We also have an extremely high combined annual growth rate of 54.9% in Australia, thus lowering risks associated with entering new markets. Australia is also rated highly on the BMI Asia Pacific Innovative Pharmaceuticals Risk Reward Index, having a rating of 26.3, which is second in APAC and 10th globally. This is down to several reasons, namely Australia's aging and affluent population. Thus, even though there is an increasing burden of disease, the population has access and the ability to afford healthcare. Australia's GDP per capita also continues to grow along with its population size. The government is also pushing for the implementation of low-cost generic drugs to curb health. We are considering taking two approaches to expand our sales in Australia. Starting off, we will continue to organically grow with our current product portfolio consisting of mainly specialized drugs, which are the pediatric and oncological drugs. Secondly, to target the generic drug market in Australia, we plan to enter a distribution partnership with Sigma Pharmaceuticals. We have chosen Sigma Pharmaceuticals because they are the largest domestic distributor of pharmaceuticals in Australia, owning two of Australia's largest retail pharmacy brands, MCare and Guardian. They also have a very strong presence in the generics market. Furthermore, they have a presence in other Asia Pacific markets including Malaysia, Taiwan, Philippines and Thailand, allowing for future prospective growth opportunities into these markets. We believe Sigma will enter into a distribution partnership with Cybertron because of our extremely high combined annual growth rate of 54.9% compared to the growth of Australia's pharmaceutical sector of 1%. Sigma is also struggling financially, having to have its manufacturing and marketing arm be acquired by Aspen to rejuvenate its portfolio and address its debt. Thus, they are more likely to enter into a partnership distribution with us than any other large pharmaceutical firms based in Australia. We currently have a market size of 25 million. We also have a combined annual growth rate of 54.9%. However, we are increasing at a decreasing rate, so we'll take a conservative estimate of 40% for our annual growth rate for the next 5 years. Taking this into account, through organic growth alone, we should have 107 million in revenue by 2023 through our sales of specialized drugs.
In the case of generic drugs, we get 5% of the market share of Sigma Pharmaceuticals, which in turn holds 26% of the market share of the whole pharmaceutical industry in Australia. Assuming that the market share is constant across generic markets and the whole pharmaceutical industry, they will have 26% of $2.4 billion. So that puts us at $27.6 million in revenue at the year 2023 through calculations. So why do we say that they maintain constancy? Because A, the number of rural areas that are inaccessible by roads would decrease, but at the same time the rural market size would increase. So these two factors, if kept constant in the next 5 years, approximately cancel each other out. So we'll consider them to be constant. So this allows us to have a potential market size of $3.4 billion US if we're completely able to harness the whole market size. Understanding that that is an unrealistic proposition, we tell you that even if we're able to realistically harness 5% of the total market size, which is well within our mandate, we would hit a smooth profit of $171 million in terms of revenue by the year 2023. Thank you.